Okay, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Bailey Humphrey. I'm the U.S. customer support person in the U.S. for LanguageNet, and I'm very excited today to be able to introduce you to Anna Cox. She works in Clayton County Public Schools, just south of Atlanta. She has for over 20 years. For about 19 years, she taught Latin at Jonesboro High School, and she's been in her current role as district supervisor and content coordinator for world languages. She's brought about a lot of change, a lot of good change, and she's taken over that role. And she's taught a lot of professional development seminars similar to this one. So I'm very excited now to be able to have her talking to you all about experiential learning for communication objectives. So I will now turn over to Anna Cox.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Bailey. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I want to welcome everybody here today. I'm excited to talk about something that I'm getting ready to share with my team coming up in the next coming months. And basically that is something that I became very interested in not terribly long ago, and it was experiential learning. All right, so I got kind of excited about this idea of experiential learning, and the more that I learned about it, I thought, you know what, this is what I did forever in the classroom, and so how do I package it and share it with other teachers is what I started thinking about over the last several months. And so I'm going to be presenting this to my teachers. I'm going to be presenting it hopefully at some conferences, and just really thinking about how we use experience as the teacher. And so as a former Latin teacher, I had to bring a quote, and I had to bring it from Julius Caesar, who, if I've got any Latin teachers out there, know he's about the most boring person to read. Oh no, don't come after me. But I thought this quote worked well. Ut est rerum omnium magister usus. Basically, experience is the teacher of all things. And if we think about that, it is very true. Bailey did a great job of introducing me. I put some information here about me if you want to see any other information. In my district, I support Arabic, Chinese, French, Latin, and Spanish teachers. I'm also the lead for international travel, which plays right into experiential learning. I'm all about travel, all about opportunities to get students out of the classroom and using what they learn in the classroom, and then to work with that knowledge. I do believe that all students deserve the opportunity to learn, regardless of background and zip code. And that's important for me, who has taught in South Atlanta for now 20-something years. I believe that all students can learn if they're given the opportunity to engage in authentic resources and opportunities. And it's opportunities that we're getting ready to talk about. So I want you to take a minute and think about some of the components of your best lessons. Just take 10 seconds. Think about what were some of the components of your best lessons, the ones you return to and think about and say, you know what, I need to do that again, or I need to redo it in this way for this unit. So take just a second and think about that. And I want to add in this question. When and where did you learn a valuable lesson? Was it in the classroom? Or was it somewhere else? So if we value our lessons that we're sharing with students, are we valuing what we are sharing in the classroom? Are we valuing what they bring from outside the classroom? Are we valuing what they're going to get when they're outside the classroom, and how they're going to bring all those pieces together? And that's basically what experiential learning is. We learn by doing, we learn by experimenting, we learn by participating, we definitely learn by reflecting, and we always learn by teaching. I always learned a lot more when I was teaching than necessarily when I was a learner. I learned a lot as a teacher. So let's talk about what experiential learning is, and let's see if maybe this sounds familiar. So experiential learning is learning for the students and the teachers, honestly, which is well planned. Experiential learning stimulates academic inquiry, stimulates that opportunity for students to ask questions. It promotes interdisciplinary learning. And there is no teacher who understands interdisciplinary learning more than a language teacher. Because we're never just teaching languages. We're teaching languages. We're teaching social studies. We're teaching psychology. We're teaching art. We're teaching music. It's all there. And so experiential learning promotes that interdisciplinary form of our learning that's really important for students. It promotes cultural awareness. That's really important. And it encourages leadership. When students and teachers take leadership roles, then they have an opportunity to learn in a completely different capacity. And that's what experiential learning is. Really, if you think about it, a lot of our learning should be experiential. We should be learning by inquiry. We should be learning from thinking about multiple content areas. We should be learning by thinking about cultural awareness and interacting with diverse groups of people. And we should be learning as we step into leadership roles. So this is Kolb's cycle of experiential learning that I pulled. You could just Google it if you want to pull it anytime. But he talks about concrete experience and engaging directly in authentic situations. Talks about reflective observation, thinking about what happened and relating to past experiences and conceptual understandings. Talks about abstract conceptualization, or taking those perceptions and distilling them into abstract concepts. And finally, active experimentation. So taking new ideas and honing those skills into a brand new experience. So how does this cycle of experiential learning reflect a good classroom experience? Well, that's pretty obvious. If you think about concrete experience, what do we do in the classroom? We view or we listen to vocabulary in context, sometimes through a written text, sometimes through a visual text, and I should add here an audio text. So we have those concrete experiences. What about reflection? Well, once we take that vocabulary in context or view the visual or written text, we start to reflect. And we look for connections with previous learning so that we start to see the big picture, be that in language and communication or in our cultures and our connections and our communities. Then what do? Well, we take that concept and we share the big picture and we start to use our new learning, use our new vocabulary, understand our previous vocabulary and how it works with our new concepts, and we start bringing all those pieces together. You learn one verb, but you can't use that verb until you learn how it works with this particular object or this particular noun or this particular personal pronoun. And then ultimately we implement it. We test our new skills. We apply our new skills in a brand new experience. And the reason I started thinking about this was this summer. I took a group to Spain, and while we were in Spain, I would talk to the kids. This was a district trip. So we had students from across the district, students, some I knew, most of whom I did not know. And so I would ask them, hey, what language did you take? Hey, what language did you take? What level are you in? And so many of them would say, you know, I took level 3 Spanish. And I might sit down with them in a restaurant, and they weren't applying their skills in a new experience. And I thought, my goodness, we've got to do better. We've got to do better. We've got to do more experiential learning. We've got to do more conceptual learning and more implementation so that the students can improve their communication. That's what we've got to do. So what do students get out of this? And this is adapted from Kent State University's Community Engaged Learning. When you get this presentation, you're welcome to click that link down here where it says Community Engaged Learning and go and do a little deeper reading. But students, they gain a deeper conceptual understanding. When you work with experiential learning, with experimenting and participating and leading, you have a deeper conceptual understanding. You have a more enhanced view of your community, of where you are in the world. And that's what I used to teach my kids all the time. We would look at a map and we would find Rome. And then we would find Egypt, and we would find Greece, and we'd find all these places, and they would say, why is this important? Well, it's because you need to know where you are and where you are in relation to everything that you're learning. What's your place in the world? The students gain an understanding of skills, of passions, values, interests. These are all things that we as language teachers understand inherently. How important it is that when we learn language, when we communicate, when we learn culture, when we learn about communities, it is far more than the 5 C's from ACTFL, that it's skills and passions and values and interest. Students get collaboration opportunities. That's the word of the day, collab, collab, collab. We want to make sure they can work together. We get that students have a satisfaction in maybe fulfilling a community need. That's really important. We're going to look at a way that we can put that in the classroom. And then they're going to get some self-confidence and some leadership. Also, along with teaching, I also coached a team, continue to coach a team, a mock trial team. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Basically, students act like lawyers and they act like witnesses, and they put on this competition. So that's one of the things I've done for the last almost 20 years. And the self-confidence that these kids gain is nothing like what I would see in the classroom. I needed to see more building of self-confidence and more building of leadership skills. And so I would begin to bring more of that into the classroom from what I would do as a coach. So what are some examples? What does experiential learning look like? Well, we've talked about, I'm sure you've had PD with authentic learning or authentic resources, but we need to think about authentic learning experiences. How do we get hands-on activities, real hands-on, like really participating? How do we attend performances? How do we get some communication opportunities with native speakers? How do we get study abroad experiences? How do we get these travel opportunities? These are examples of experiential learning and things that I want you to start thinking about. How do I bring this into my classroom? How do I really take my kids out of the classroom? And how do I give them this opportunity to use their communication outside the classroom? And why? Well, when you use these authentic learning experiences, students take initiative. They work through learning problems. They get feedback. They get effective feedback that they can use all that feedback in improving themselves. Students are engaged in opportunities to think critically, but how often do we ask our kids to think emotionally, socially, physically, right? We always say think critically, but I think we're leaving out some of our senses. Are we allowing them to think emotionally? Are we allowing them to think socially about the people around them and their place in the world? And are we encouraging them to learn from consequences and mistakes as much as we are successes? We're all about success, success, success. But how do we encourage them to learn from when something doesn't go right? My best lessons came from when the day before my lesson went down the drain, in the toilet. I'm not even going to lie. And I would go home and I would go, ugh, that was terrible. How do we improve that? I learned from my consequences and my mistakes. We need to encourage our students to do the same thing. So let's talk about what experiential learning could look like where you are. When you get this presentation, you'll be able to return to the table of contents. I've got some links built in here to take you to all these different slides. So these are the 4 pieces of experiential learning I want to look at today with you guys. We'll start with musical and theatrical performance. So this is experiential learning. Well, why? Music and language and communication, they have natural connections. Music allows students to make emotional connections. Remember we said we want them to think critically and emotionally. Theatrical stories are borrowed from a variety of language traditions. We've all heard of Romeo and Juliet, but have you taught your students the story of Tristan and Isolde, of Kishi, of Pyramus and Thisbe? There's a star-crossed lover story in every language tradition. So why not talk about those stories and then let them view Romeo and Juliet. Maybe there's a playhouse in your town that's going to put it on in February. Take your kids to see it. Read that story of the star-crossed lovers in your target language. Let them perform it, and then go and view it. There's power in live theater. Theater has that power to give students confidence in speaking that I think you get nowhere else. And let's be clear, live performance is so much better than YouTube. How many of us in the middle of the pandemic, when we finally could return to live performances, I was emotionally overcome when I've attended my first live performance after being in lockdown. It was so thrilling. We were outdoors, we were masked, we were at the Atlanta Opera. All the Atlanta Opera people were in their masks, but I was just emotionally overcome because live performance, there's just nothing like it. It's not like anything else. So how do we put these performances in our classroom implementation? Well, for our novice learners, they can describe performances, music, theater, with adjectives, and you can give them simple sentence frames. I like, I don't like. I enjoyed, I did not enjoy. I thought, I did not think, or I thought that, if we want to go into some indirect statements. Our intermediate learners can write simple sentences in the target language. Our advanced learners can write a review of the performance. So what? So what could they do? Well, you know what? They could take that review, they could put it on social media as an art or a music critique. So we've not only had an authentic resource, but we've created an authentic resource. Maybe we reenact a scene from the play. Maybe we rewrite a scene from the play we've seen. Maybe we rewrite an ending where Juliet doesn't stab herself, where she wakes up in time for Romeo. Maybe we do a rewrite of the stories that we're reading. These are all really good preview activities too. So I encourage you, if you attend a performance, to do something after the performance and before. Anticipatory sets are really great for kids, thinking about what's going to happen before. Another one is a museum trip. If we're talking about traveling somewhere, what about a museum trip? You may not have one close by you, but you may have one very close by you. So what can you go see? Well, you can go see anything, and you can link it to your classroom. If you are a French teacher, you don't have to go see The Impressionist. If you are a Latin teacher, you don't have to go see the sculptures of ancient Rome. You can go see a variety of art, from ancient to modern. It doesn't matter what kids see, just let them see it in person. Let them make an emotional and cerebral connection to that art. Engage them in a visit to see something that's outside their norm. Now, I'm a total dork. I take my kids to museums all the time, much to their chagrin. But my students, I had one student probably 20 years ago tell me, Miss Cox, the only time that I go to Atlanta is when I go downtown with you on a trip. And that was the only thing that kept me going on these trips, and making sure that kids had opportunities for experiential learning. You want to encourage them to think critically about form and material and meaning and motivation. And these are so many things that you can bring into the classroom. So again, think about preview and think about review. You can do things before you go. You can do things after you get back. And so many things with communication, with interpretive, presentational, and interpersonal communication. We would always preview the pieces that we were going to see. Here's an example of that in this lesson here. We went to the High Museum, which is located in Atlanta, Georgia. And I think we were going to see art from a variety of time periods. So we were going to see some Monet. We weren't going to see The Birth of Venus, which is my absolute favorite painting. But we were going to see some of these paintings. I know we saw Andy Warhol. And then, so we talked about them. I let kids describe them in the target language. But then I started to show them some things that other people would do. So there's the Sunday Afternoon, George Seurat. There's Frida Kahlo, the Venus of Urbino. And then I said, you know what? Here's the girl with the pearl earring. It's a famous painting, but does it change if you look at it this way? You know, here is I can't remember, it's Monet, they're in the woods. Anyway, so this is the painting, but does it change if you see it like this? If you see the men unclothed and the women clothed? This is the birth of Venus. Does it change if you see it like this with corgis? You know, there's a lot of things that you can ask students in the target language and really preview and play around with some of the implementation of this experiential learning. Recreating pictures, that is really hilarious. Take a look at the pictures you're going to see and have them recreate. Note differences in the target language. So here's this painting. Here's our picture recreated. Put both of them on the screen or on a paper, however you decide to do it, and then note differences in the target language. Red shirt here, woman here, man here. These are easy things to put into an interpretive communication activity. Ask questions in the target language. Just like I showed you earlier, is the girl with a pearl earring different when somebody made it look like a selfie with a camera? Put up a gallery walk of pictures. Have students write sticky notes to talk about their impressions in English or the target language or a mixture. Maybe you give them a list of words you want them to use, and you encourage them, use these words. But if you don't, go ahead and put the English. We want them to begin thinking. For my novice students, maybe they list the material, because material is really important in art. Is it iron? Is it marble? Is it paint? Material is really easy to list. Adjectives to describe pictures and sculptures. For my intermediate and my advanced, and let's be clear, even my novice too, if you scaffold vocabulary, you can look at memes. Kids love memes. We love memes. Here are two examples. A piece of artwork, I don't even know this one, but you'll see on the left it says, cows kill more people than sharks. I'm surprised cows kill any sharks at all. You know, these are really easy things to put in the target language, and so we've done presentational. Maybe the students talk. I'm going to show you interpersonal in just a minute. I thought this one was really funny on the right. This QR code, I mean, Lord, we have QR codes everywhere, right? Takes you to a website for a garum restaurant in Pompeii that hasn't been updated since '79. Garum is this really sticky fish sauce that they would eat in Pompeii. And it's really funny that someone put that on a sidewalk from Pompeii. It's kind of funny. Here's some video voiceovers, and I found this in my favorite place to find new things to try in the classroom, and that's TikTok. I love TikTok. So let me see if I can get to the video. Here we go. Let's play this first one.
Oh, poppycock. It seems I have forgotten to take off my Apple Watch for this portrait. Oh dear.
So it's short, it's presentational communication, it's funny, and it's a great way for kids to interact with the art before you go see it. This one's my absolute favorite. It's a bit long, I think, but I think it's a great example to start thinking about how you would take a piece of art and do these video voiceover memes.
So this is still water? Mm-hmm. And I ordered sparkling mineral water with no bubbles. I see. So you understand why I'm furious, right? I mean, this could be tap water. What if I drank tap water? It would have been a catastrophe. A catastrophe at best. You know, I was so furious I had to have Samuel hold my butter knife. Say the word, sir. The word for what? It doesn't matter. We have a secret code no one can break. Anyway, look, the point is I just don't want to go Super Saiyan on this place before enjoying my plate of unpasteurized butter. Do you understand? Absolutely. I'll tell you what. I'm just going to go and I'll get you new water and I'll kill the servant who gave that to you, okay? I mean, if it wouldn't be too much to ask, I really appreciate it. Daniel, Grandmama wants to know where her blue ballet shoes are. Slay. Samuel, Operation Kill Those Two Women. Yes, my lord. What does it mean?
So it's absolutely silly, it's absolutely ridiculous, but you can see how you could use some really comprehensible presentational language for students in the classroom. When you get this presentation later, I've embedded these, I hope, well enough that you're able to see them. And like I said, if you're a TikTok person, even if you're not a TikTok person, look on YouTube and you can find some really good examples. Two more experiential learning activities I thought about. One is a community service project. Well, why? Because we're always looking for opportunities for community service. We want students to develop empathy. We want to give them a perspective on their local community. We want them to engage with the very diverse members of their community. We want to engage them with multilingual members of their community. And I don't know where you are, but where I am, our community is incredibly multilingual. In our schools, we have more than 100 languages spoken by families at home as their primary home language. And I know that's true of many areas around the United States. Perhaps your community service serves as a potential credit for the International Diploma Seal. If I've got any Georgia teachers out there, we have an ISDS and they have to have community service. Well, why not help them to get that credit in the classroom through experiential learning? Students can learn from success in supporting a community. Maybe they become, we always say lifelong learners, but why aren't they lifelong community supporters? And so how can we implement this in the classroom? Well, we can have our novice learners create language cards for a feeder elementary or middle school. Many of these schools want to identify themselves with different languages. So if it's the language you teach, then have them create those language cards for the office, for the library, for the bathroom, for the water fountain. You know, have them create those cards for the school. It's a community service. It's a school service. Maybe they prepare a poem or a song to perform at a local community or a festival. It's Hispanic Heritage Month. That's big in my community. So maybe your students prepare that and have a little presentational communication. Maybe they serve at a soup kitchen and they prepare flyers with information in the target language about food pantries or other community events. My school district is consistently sending out information when a church opens a food pantry or when a group or organization gives away food. What an opportunity if you don't have interpreters to work with your advanced students and prepare flyers that can be given out in the community. Maybe you write out directions to making sandwiches or food like manna bags in the target language. Students have to make them and then they donate them to a soup kitchen or to a homeless shelter or to a church that may be in need in your community. There's so many options where you can utilize language and community service in the classroom and make those students lifelong supporters of their community through experiential learning. And lastly, my personal favorite, al fresco, outside. The first reason is really the only reason. Like, when are our kids really ever outside anymore? I have to force my children out the door. Why do we need to go outside? Well, we can go outside because we can find relationships between our vocabulary, our language, and the nature around us. Let kids take pictures. Let kids use those pictures to demonstrate vocabulary and language and sentence stems through some interpretive communication. If you go outside, it creates some space and some freedom to create pictures and videos. We're forever trying to think of ways to demonstrate learning that is different from writing it on a piece of paper. Go outside, breathe the fresh air, let kids have the space to create and the freedom to really feel like they have that opportunity. There are always outdoor spaces outside schools. Encourage students to collaborate with classmates. Sometimes that collaboration gets loud. How often during sixth period do you think, if they are any louder, I'm going to get a headache and I'm not going to be able to make it home? Go outside. They can collaborate as loud as they want outside. They stretch their thinking, they stretch their creativity. And it offers them multiple opportunities, including potential failure, right? As ways to demonstrate assessment of learning. Maybe they just go out there and they don't do it correctly, but they have that opportunity to fail and learn from their failure or from their mistakes. So how do we implement this? Well, take pictures, pair them with sentence stems, vocabulary, record a TikTok video using the current target language of learning, illustrate or demonstrate the lines of a poem in the target language that focuses on a natural element. You're thinking about nature. You're thinking about lines of poetry. You're studying about beauty and aesthetics for my AP teachers out there. Here's an example of when we did that in class. And these are from many years ago from Instagram. The students had to do both English and Latin because they had to post it on Instagram, and they had to use the hashtag "the silence is deafening." We were reading the story of Echo and Narcissus, and Echo and Narcissus is the story of Narcissus thinks he's really beautiful. He falls in love with Echo. She's been enchanted. She can't say anything but her name. He doesn't know how to deal with that. You know, he looks over at a what do you call it, a lake, and he falls in love with himself, and he's stuck there. And Echo is out there just saying, "Echo, Echo." So our hashtag was "the silence is deafening." And students went outside and they took pictures that represented what we had read in Latin, and they had to publish it on Instagram. They had to publish the Latin, they had to publish the English. And so you can see these students published description of Narcissus struck by his own arrow, and then they used the hashtag "the silence is deafening." If we flipped over, we would see the Latin, and we would see silentus est. I can't remember what word we used. I think we used caudus, I think, for deafening. But that's an example of something we did outside. We could have done it inside. We could have answered questions, or we could go outside and really work with some experiential learning. What about a walking tour wherever you're located? Maybe you do a walking tour of your town and talk about architecture, talk about types of buildings in the target language. The best field trip I ever did was we hopped on a bus and we rode a half mile down and we walked around our cute little downtown area. And when we did that, we looked at some examples. We were talking about buildings and architecture and gladiators. And so instead of having them fill it out on a piece of paper, I gave them a sentence stem, and they had to take a picture or they had to do a video that represented that particular sentence stem. They had to have a building that looked like where gladiators might participate, where they might hear laws. They had to take a picture of the courthouse, where someone sells togas. So they had to take a picture of a place where they sell clothing, where someone might see horses and chariots, so maybe a garage. And so it was a real play on what we were learning, but it gave them an opportunity to do some experiential learning and to learn by doing and participating rather than just writing down an answer in class or writing on a piece of paper. So that's basically it for me. I want to encourage you to get our students of all ages, whether you're elementary to middle to high school, get your students out there experimenting. Experiment with language, experiment with learning, experiment with participation, with leadership, all of the pieces that go into experiential learning. I want to thank you for joining me today. This is my email. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions. If you want to Zoom, I'll be happy to Zoom with you. This is a link to the presentation, a tiny URL, so you are welcome to it. You're welcome to use it and think about any of those ideas. But that is it for me. If you have questions, I would love to answer any questions that you might have. O preguntas o rogaciones.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was wonderful. I'll allow just a moment if anyone has any questions, if they want to put them in the chat. But that was really great, and I'm excited to see what the attendees do with this information. It also almost makes me wish I was still in the classroom so I could implement some of these ideas. We'll also be sending out this recording, so if you would like to go back and watch through anything that Anna said after the fact, you'll be able to do that. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions come in, so and I just want to thank you so much again. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we
Nope.
end the event?
Nope, that sounds good. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.